Welcome everyone. So I can see we already have many people connected, but let's wait just a few seconds or minutes before we officially start and for more people to join. Okay, so I guess we will start. So good morning, everyone, and welcome. So I'm Raphaelle Germain from Evolution Europe, and I will be the host of the webinar today. So we're really glad you've taken the time to join us, whether you're a founder, an investor, or simply curious about how healthcare startups fund their development. I think you will find today's conversation generally useful. A couple of housekeeping notes before we start. Today's session will be recorded and shared with you afterwards. Please feel free to use the chat to send in your questions through. We will have a dedicated Q&A session at the end, and we will do our best to get through as many of your questions as possible. So coming back to our topic of today, why are we going to talk about alternative funding for healthcare startups specifically? Well, because healthcare funding is hard and the development cycles are long, regulatory barriers are significant, and the risk profile of a medtech or biotech company is very different from a typical software startup. So traditional venture capital is often hesitant or arrives too late in the journey, and that leaves a lot of founder in a funding gap, especially in the early stages. And if you look at the numbers, while overall VC funding for biotech and medtech is on the rise, the money is increasingly going to later stage de-risked companies, and early stage medtech or biotech founders are still facing a very real funding gap. And that's exactly the space we're going to talk about today. The webinar actually came out of a conversation with Capital Cell team, and we realized we have been supporting some of the same startups and thought it would be really useful to bring that together in one session. So we also wanted to share a real funding journey from a medtech startup because those kind of testimonies are rare and often happen in closed circles. So today we're going to take a look at two concrete alternatives to the VC route, EU grants and equity crowdfunding, and hear directly from a founder who has used both. So let me introduce you to our three speakers for today. First, Alice Mussard, my colleague at Evolution Europe. Our company has been helping innovative companies access European funding for over 20 years, and Alice will walk us through the world of EU grants and how they can work specifically for healthcare startups. Second, Julien Gillet-Daubin, Director France at Capital Cell, Europe's first equity crowdfunding platform dedicated exclusively to biotech and life sciences. And Julien will explain how democratizing investment in health innovation and their crowdfunding platform actually works in practice. And third, we are very lucky to have today with us Mathieu Horras, CEO of Aspivix, a Swiss medtech company that has actually been through a very diverse funding journey. Mathieu will share how Aspivix combine grants, crowdfunding, and private capital to get where they are today. Next slide, please. So this is how the session is structured today. So as I was saying, we will hear from each of our three speakers in turn, and then we will open up for questions at the end of the session. So let's get into it. I will start by handing over to my colleague Alice, who leads grant advisory work at Evolution Europe. So Alice is going to cover everything you need to know about EU grants as a healthcare startup, the main programs, and why they are generally attractive. So Alice, over to you.
Thank you, Raphaelle, and thank you everyone again for joining the session today. So now, as we just mentioned, we will go through the different scheme that we are working on at Evolution and respond to this question, how grants work for healthcare startups. So, but first of all, a quick introduction about what we are doing at Evolution. We are supporting deep tech companies for over 20 years. And through those years, we raised 250 millions in EU grants. And we are expert in medtech, biotech, health tech, also on other sectors of the deep tech. But those are our main expertise. So now I'm gonna give you a quick overview about our main funding programs at Evolution. Of course, you have others that are available for this year, but those are our stars program in the company. So first of all, let me start with a famous EIC accelerator. I am sure that you're familiar with this one. So typically, you will need a TRL 6 to be eligible. So it means that you're finalizing your prototype, but you still need additional developments before reaching TRL 9 and of course the markets. You have also information about the next deadlines. Specifically, it mentions the full applications because, as you might be aware, you have 3 different stages for the AC Accelerator. You have the short proposal, the full proposal, and the interview stage. You can submit whatever you want a short application. They review it normally during the first week of each month. But here you have the deadlines of the full application, and if you are successful, it will bring you to the final stage with the interview with the jury of the AC. Regarding the budget itself, you have 2 different branches through these grants. First of all, the grants. You can ask up to 2.5 million euros, and you need to co-finance 30% of this amount. But you have also a possibility of equity up to 10 million euros. This part is more focused on marketing activities. You could also hire people. So you have this package where the EAC can support you to reach the markets and financing your pre-commercialization. Then you have another program of the EAC that is really interesting because it's a program that is for a lower TRL from 4 to 6, so meaning that you're working currently on your prototype, but you have completed the proof of concept. The main requirement of this program, but also can be a difficulty, you have to be granted from another program of the European Union. It can be, for example, the EAC Pathfinder, that is from a TRL from 1 to 3, or another research funding program you have in the European Union. I invite you to check also those conditions on the website of the EAC. And for this program, you can apply as a single applicant, but also with the consortiums. For example, you can bring partners that have been part of your previous funding program you raised, but you can also apply as a single applicant. The next deadline will be on the 16th of September. So we have 1 deadline per year for this funding program. So it's important to have a strategy and also the deadlines in mind before applying, because of course it's a long process. For this one, you have 2 main stages. You have the writing part, but you also have an interview with the EIC. Regarding the budget of this program, it's up to 2.5 million, but in this case, it's 100% financed. That makes this program very interesting. The third program we have at Evolution that is quite different from the EAC comes from the Eureka, and we are working especially on Eureka Your Stars. It's a TRL that is similar to the EAC transition. But the difference here is you will need a partner to apply. because here the aim is to finance collaboration between European entities. Can be between SMEs, can be between research centers, but most of the time they promote collaboration between SMEs. All of the countries of the European Union are eligible, but also the United Kingdom, Switzerland, and South Korea. The next deadline for this funding program will be the 10th of September, and same I advise you to apply in advance, but also think about who could be your best partner. As the company exists for 20 years, we could also support you on finding a partner, but of course we recommend to have first of all a look to your network. Regarding the budget, so it depends actually on your country where you're actually based. It's also a co-financing program, so most of the time you have to finance around 50% of the grants. It depends on the country, as I just mentioned. But yeah, so normally you apply to the Eurostars committee, you submit an application with your partner, and then the final stage is to discuss with the national agency of your country, and then you can receive the grant. Finally, the last program that we are successful at Evolution is from a different body. Actually, it's specifically for Swiss startups. And it is a startup innovation project. The TRL is larger than the other programs. But here the main requirement is to not be on the markets, so not to be at the TRL 9. That is the most important requirement. Regarding the deadlines, you have deadlines during the whole year, so you have different possibility to submit your application. It will depend on your sector where you are applying on. But I invite you also to check the InnoSweep's website or directly come to us. We will give you more concrete information regarding the deadlines. And finally, on average, Swiss startups are getting 1.9 million euros. But as the EAC Accelerator and the Eureka Eurostars, you need to co-finance the program. So in this case, you will need to co-finance 30%. And those are the main programs that we have at Evolution for this year. So I invite you to contact us if you want more information about those programs. But apart from that, we would like to give you some information about how to avoid the common pitfalls that we are meeting, that we are seeing when we are meeting someone for the first time, or also during the process of the writing that can happen. So first of all, applying with the wrong TRL. So when you're submitting an application for one of the programs I mentioned before, you have to complete the TRL. For example, for the EAC Accelerator, you need to be at the TRL 6 when you submit your application. If you apply at the TRL 5, you will not be eligible for the EAC Accelerator, and you could actually lose one chance to get granted from the EAC Accelerator. The second point is about commercialization strategy. Even if you are at a low TRL 4, even 3, we really recommend you to think about your commercialization strategy. How is the market? How is the market working? Who are the stakeholders on the market? And what is actually the future of your technology on the market? The third point is about a famous adjective that we all use those days, that is disruptive. So it's not about having an innovation, it's about to have something really different, something that doesn't exist on the market for now, but also have an innovation that doesn't exist, has a real impact on the European society. So you have to combine those two criteria to be eligible for the European grants. The first point is about the budget. So you will need to think about what do you need? What do you need to finance the next stages of development of your technology? So for this reason, we mentioned before the TRL because it will help you then to see what are the next steps, but also the timelines. For this reason, we mentioned the deadlines before. It's important to have in mind, for example, 6 months before, what do you want to do with the next deadline? Do you want to apply? Do you want to reach the deadline that there is after? So it's really important to have that in mind. And finally, something that we sometimes forget, but it's really important to have a diversity in the team. So of course you need a really strong team on the technical side because they need to explain your technology and what is the need on the market. But you also need someone that have the commercial vision, someone maybe that has already experience in business development, or someone working as an investor, board of others company. I really advise you to have this kind of profile in your company or even on your project if you are at a low TRL, but it will help you to imagine the future of your company in the European market or even others. So, how to face those challenges working with us? The aim here is to help you, to guide you through the big European landscape of European grants, because you have a lot of possibilities, a part of the ones that I mentioned, but also give you a first insight of how we are working at Evolution. So first of all, we do an internal assessment with you. So we are checking your eligibility with our technical team. Our technical team are engineers, or some of them have PhDs in different sectors. Of course, in health tech and medtech, as I said, our expertise is focused on this sector, on those sectors of the deep tech. But yes, first of all, we check your eligibility, your TRL, the budget you need, your team, and of course, if you can co-finance the grant, because it's one of the most important criteria. Then, if we find a fit, if you find a fit, if you find a fit, sorry, with one of the grants, we start writing your application, fully writing your application. Of course, we will need your feedback about what we are doing because we will need to be sure that it completes your expectations, but also your storytelling that you will defend in front of the jury, for example, of the EAC. And it helps you to move to the next stage, that is interview with the jury of for example, the EAC. As we mentioned before, so for some of those grants, you have an interview. For example, for the EAC, it can be in Brussels. You have an interview for the EAC Accelerator, and you have an interview for the EAC Transition. So we are preparing company for this stage internally at Evolution, doing rehearsals with you, giving you advices, and several people with different profiles of the company will be part of those rehearsals. Apart from the EAC, we are of course preparing for the interview for the Startup Innovation Project. For the InnoSwiss, you have also an interview, and we are preparing companies for this stage. Finally, a stage that we are sometimes forgetting when we are writing the application and not thinking about what happened after being granted is the project management and reporting. So we are supporting our clients on for example, the EAC grants for the reporting to the European Commission. So it means that we will work with you during the whole duration of your project. We have a specific team in the company that is only focused on that. So you can understand that we are supporting you fully during the whole preparation, but also after being granted. And yes, thank you for listening this part of the webinar. If you have any question regarding what I mentioned, don't hesitate to contact us through this QR code or even LinkedIn or email. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alice. It was really useful to have that information laid out so clearly. So we are going now to look at a very different instrument, which is equity crowdfunding. And joining us is Julien, Director of France at Capital Cell. So Julien is going to cover what Capital Cell is and what sets it apart, who actually invest on their platform, and what that investor community means for a startup beyond the capital raised. So Julien, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. So, hello everyone. My name is Julien Gillet-Daubin. Well, before we dive into Capital Cell, maybe I wanted to tell you a bit more where I come from. Well, like many of you in this webinar, I'm a former entrepreneur. I spent significant time also as a transition manager, where I took the lead of a CDMO dedicated to cell therapy. I put it back on track, and ultimately I sold it to Sartorius. So why does it matter? Well, first thing is, well, I know what it's like to navigate through what we call in French the valley of death. As Raphaelle was mentioning earlier, this precise moment where business angels have reached the bottom of their pocket, and the VCs still tell you, well, to come back as soon as you have your first in-human data. So I faced exactly the same challenges, 15 years ago now, and I did raise money on a crowdfunding platform at that time. And in fact, this is the reason why I joined Capital Cell for its mission. Well, I keep saying that we're more health tech enthusiasts, first dedicated to boost the ecosystem, especially on these targets, on this precise moment for biotech and medtech. And we're more this than just financial expert with a biotech vertical among many others. We do live and breathe life science. So if we go to the next slide, please. Next slide. So what Capital Cell is, just the previous one, sorry. So what is Capital Cell? Well, as Raphaelle said, we are indeed Europe's leading equity crowdfunding platform entirely dedicated to biotech and life science. But let's make things clear. When people hear crowdfunding, they often think about, Kickstarters or any creative financial gadgets that may compromise the future and scare our investor. I mean, in our world, it's completely different. We operate within a very strict regulatory framework, and it's essentially the same legal and compliance structure like an IPO. It's a simplified one, and it's capped in terms of fundraising. But at the end of the day, we are fully licensed by ESMA, which is the European financial authorities. And this gives us a very, very strict way to proceed. And it gives us also a European flavor in everything we do. So we are constantly optimizing our structure to ensure that a project from one European country can be seamlessly onboard any investor from any other country across the continent. And this gives us very often for certain companies who think that, well, I'm in France, I will raise money only with French people. I'm in Italy, I will raise money from only Italian people. Well, at the end of the day, just to give you a number, it's usually 60%, 40%. So 60% are local people around the project, but 40 comes from other country. And this is what Capital Cell also can bring. It's really giving this European dimension to any project. If we go to the next slide about selection process. Well, let's talk about how we select projects. Well, I'll be honest with you, we're quite selective. We're not really yes man people. And it's only about 5% of the company who actually make it onto the platform. Just to give you numbers, last year in 2025, we've analyzed about 650 applications, and we ran exactly 26 campaigns. So our process is structured in 3 key steps. First, the bioexpert network. Today it's even closer now to 4,000 experts across Europe. And when you apply, about 20 of them will evaluate your non-confidential deck that we will upload on the platform. They will ask you questions, interact with the management team, and they will evaluate your project and provide us a feedback. And this analysis goes to the capital cell selection committee, which includes all the investment director like myself and all our different analysts. And this is where, to be clear, about every two project will be taken out of the selection process. We give anyway a report at every steps to companies, and we explain why. In the case we say no, we explain why it's a no. Step two is a financial evaluation. This is a deep dive conversation with investment director like me, where we just don't look at numbers. We look closely at strategy, how much you raise, what to do with, what is your next inflection point. We try to understand who will be potential investor coming to the following round, because yes, there will be other rounds and probably other rounds after us. And we know it's a crucial phase. We need to understand what will be the investment proposal that we can bring on the platform. So understanding where you are, your maturity, the valuation you're proposing, and is it going to make it appealing for people or not? And don't take it wrong. I mean, investor, even on a crowdfunding platform, they are relatively educated now on what should be the value and how much they can expect from a project, depending on its maturity. And you are, at least at Capital Cell, 50% of the people who come from the health tech environment, one way or another, whether they could in pharma industry. So this financial evaluation is really a moment where we take time to discuss and to really better know each other. And the step three is just a classic due diligence. I think it's next slide. It's better highlighted. Thank you. This is where we sign an NDA and we dive directly straight into your data room. We look, of course, at financial, but also legal aspect, IP, regulatory pathway. We often bring external expertise with us. So people like you can see here on the logo on. And we realize an investment note, which is quite deep and intense investment note that we're happy to share after with potential co-investors. And this can be also a lever for you to motivate finally, ultimately, the people that can join us in the round. And this is our overall process. And it's only at the end of this that we say, okay, let's go for a campaign or not. But the good news is, although we are very selective, every time we have a deliverable, we share it. And even if we say no, yeah, we normally you will have learned something out of the process. Just to give you a quick and last thing, sorry, the whole process of selection is free. It's only once we start the campaign that we start to have some fees. Quick success story. Well, just to give you a couple of numbers, Axoltis has been done in November last year. It's a French company. Aspivix, I think we will let Mathieu talking about it. And Nanobot is a Spanish company, and they've raised all the sum, I think, in less than 10 days here in Spain. If we just go to next slide, talking about track record and a key figure. Well, those are the end of the year 2025 numbers. At that time, we had done 153 rounds and for almost 150 million euro. I think I haven't checked this morning, but I think we are somewhere around 161 round now for 153 million euro this time. Well, the key number here on this slide, although it's full of number, is really the one I'm really looking after all the time is the survival rate, the one in the middle here. Having nearly 94% of our portfolio companies still active since the conception of a Capital Cell 11 years ago. I mean, for me, it proves that our vetting process denially filters for quality, and that's key. That's key for us in the way we present companies on the platform, but that's key for you in the sense that if you've been selected, and you are among the top quality, confidence also to other co-investors. If we go to the next slide about who is investing, Well, on average, bear in mind a couple of things that are very important. What we call the capital cell existing community will bring more or less 40 to 60% of the funds of a campaign, depending from one project to the other. Sometimes it can go to extreme cases like 80-20, but it really depends on the size of the round and maturity of the project. But let me be very clear. A campaign is not a science, it's an art. And if you think you will succeed just by spamming invest now on LinkedIn 3 times a week, you're going to fail. If you think you can just sit back and rely solely on the capital cell database, you're also going to fail. I know it may sound a little bit sarcastic to talk like this, but you not be aware already, but you must know that whether they are VCs, business angel, or even crowdfunding investors, they all behave like a flock of sheep. And it's human nature. So an investor will look at your project also because someone else they respect told them, hey, I believe in this team, I'm putting my money on it. And this is really what creates the snowball effect. What we're doing at Capital Cell is giving access to a broader community. Some of them is coming from us, some of them is going from you, some of them we're going to outreach them together. But this is really this exercise of creating the snowball effect. And the cross that the crowdfunding cross that you have here is just to prepare the work before doing the crowdfunding. So deep dive into this slide today. Just bear in mind that we are on a very regular basis. We are doing training session also to prepare correctly crowdfunding rounds. But what is key about who is investing is really summarized in this slide, in the sense that well, the most important one are the key investor, top right one, sorry. Those ones are lead investor, business angel, family office, potentially VCs. They are most important because they give you instant credibility and create the first push of traction. The sure things, the one middle right, well, this is mostly your love money. They invest because they believe in you even more than in the science. And what you have to do is to keep them constantly updated about the progress and so on. The low value potential, they are important because they are a big chunk in terms of amount of money at the end of a project. There are most of them smaller retail investors who will join during the campaign at some point. The thing you have to know is that they will probably ask a lot of questions for a modest amount. So the idea is to find the right balance between burning all your energy answering them one by one, or instead trying to set up webinars and many other, collective moments where you will be able to address everything at once. And lastly, the rest of the world, the bottom left, sorry, this is the broad public. This is the one we don't know. And this is your called LinkedIn post you will push. The thing which is very ironic is the fact that founders always think that they have to start here. And this is precisely the last thing that we do and not the first. In the sense that the first point is to really try to map different other actors, trying to actionate them, trying to communicate with them with specific way each time, and then to create the momentum. And at the very last, we will do the rest of the world. Well, I won't go any further in that. Just maybe next slide, please. Just to wrap it up here, we provide the tool, we provide the tech, we provide the legal structure and dedicated investor relation team. We're able to handle thousands of questions that will pop up during the campaign. And Mathieu can tell you we had a lot of fun also chasing people at the end for the conversion of the last €1,000 of the campaign, trying to outreach people on the phone and so on to make sure that they will finalize the investment. We're here to do that. But bear in mind also that equity crowdfunding is not for every project. It's not for every team. And that's completely okay. I mean, if you can manage to raise money in another way, good news, perfect. But just bear in mind that a public campaign exposes your company to the world, and it will demand your energy for a few months. So it only makes sense if your team and your board is fully aligned with your idea. If not, maybe you have to consider something else. But we're here to ensure that the campaign becomes a powerful solution for your growth and not just an idea to think about, well, let's have a easy money, because it's not going to be easy money. But on the other hand, Capital Cell is also here to help you doing this campaign without compromising your future, meaning your governance stay clean, your cap table remains tight, your valuation makes sense. And bear in mind, we do about 40% of our rounds along with VCs. And today we have VCs coming to us saying, hey, we would like you to do a top up on this or this round or this round, because we want to have smart money embarking on the project. And this is what we are really aiming to do. And the idea is for us to keep your full capacity to attract further investment in the future on the following rounds. I think I'll have probably a lot of questions after, but for this point, thank you very much, and I'll be happy to take your question later.
Thank you, Julien. Next slide, please. So yeah, thank you. It was really a really compelling look at what equity crowdfunding and Capital Cell can do for health startup. So now we turn to the most grounded part of today's session, which is the founder story. Aspivix is a Swiss medtech company developing Cervix, a device designed to make cervical procedures less painful, and they are addressing a real unmet need for millions of women. So Mathieu is going to walk us through Aspivix funding journey from the ground up. Over to you, Mathieu. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone, and thanks a lot, Evolution Europe, for organizing this event and for the opportunity to showcase Aspivix. Maybe we can go to the next slide. Yes, thank you so much. Thank you also, Alice and Julien, for setting up the scene. I think I will probably have only a few things to add, but I will give my perspective on all that. And but I think a lot has been already said. And maybe to set the scene regarding Aspivix and myself, Aspivix is indeed a customer, has worked with Evolution Europe in the past, has worked with Capital Cell in the past. That's probably what links us all here today. We're not only a customer, I would say we are a repeat customer, which is probably as important as being a customer, meaning that we have worked, we've seen that having grants works, and we will see how. For us, we've seen that going through crowdfunding works for different reasons, and it's something that you can combine, and that's why we not only done once, but actually we have been repeating this with both companies. Let's speak about Aspivix for a few seconds. Yes, Aspivix is a women's healthcare company. It's all about making gentle and safer stabilization of the cervix. So what is the cervix? What is the stabilization of the cervix? In short, whenever you go for intrauterine procedure, meaning that something must be inserted inside the uterus, it requires the cervix to be stabilized, aligned with the uterus. And we have the three of us. Actually, this is a picture, very old picture. Actually, we have a bit more wrinkles now. But this is a picture of the three founders, and we have invented some years ago a device which is using a suction instead of clamping, instead of pinching the cervix. So instead of being painful with the cervical tenaculum, that's the name of the device which is today used. We've been inventing a device which is called Cervix, which is a suction device. Yes, and thank you for moving to the next slide. So here's the image that we can show you today, or until Cervix came on the market. The cervical tenaculum was a device which was used nearly 120 million times a year. It's been invented probably 200 years ago. It's called in German, I like to tell the name in German because it's called a Kugelzange. What does it mean? It means a bullet retriever. So it's a device which was created to remove bullets from soldiers in the battlefield. Never been thought to be used on patients, never been thought to be used on intimate tissues of a patient. And that device, of course, triggers pain. 89% of the patients are reporting pain. 29% have bleeding that must be managed during a procedure. And as a result of that, 35% of women avoid an IUD, an intrauterine device for contraception, because of the fear of pain, because of facing the pain due to that device during a procedure. So we came up with Cavix, as I mentioned. It's a vacuum-based atraumatic cervical stabilizer. And we, along the years, along the journey, we've been able to demonstrate in clinical trials. Maybe we can stay for a few more seconds on the previous slide. Yeah, thank you. We've been able to demonstrate that with Cavix, the pain is reduced for a patient by up to 73%. The bleeding is reduced by 83%. And we have been now performing more than 10,000 procedures, and we've seen a very high satisfaction score from the patient, actually 94%, and a very high score on ease of use by the physicians at 96%. So with such a result, our mission is really to modernize the transcervical procedures, to modernize the cervical stabilization, and overall to improve the women's healthcare. And just to add one word on that slide before we move, pain doesn't seem to be very important. Some people tell us from time to time, we're talking about something which is only pain. It's not life-threatening. I would say that consequences of pain is extremely high and some people may not realize. But because of pain, patients are avoiding very robust contraception system and use suboptimal ones. Or sometimes they just delay very important procedures such as biopsies, because this type of device is also used for biopsies sometimes. Or they will delay treatment for fertility, for instance, which is of course very important for those patients. Maybe we can move to next slide. Thank you so much again. Here's just very visually to see how cervical tenaculum is used on the cervix. Of course, it's only a model. But you can see that in general, two sharp hooks are used to pinch and to basically penetrate the tissues. And today with the Cavix, you can just suck the tissue and hold the tissues instead with a very atraumatic system. Thank you. And we can probably move to next thing. Thank you. Yeah, I think that's another way to see it. Yeah, I think it's more or less the same story, but what I like to highlight is actually what comes next, which is a comparison, a very visual comparison that we decided to film on a tomato. It's very difficult to show, of course, where that device is used. It's really something we can communicate easily, but you can see on a tomato, and you can think about how the cervical tenaculum is used and traumatic, and how the Cavix is used and not traumatic. So that's a very visual comparison. And Cavix, of course, is today a device which is commercial, and commercial in a certain number of countries. So we have been through a certain number of stages from an idea to that commercialization. And this is why basically, maybe we can move next. Thank you. We have also been through the Death Valley, or I'm not sure we're out, but at least we've been through maybe you can stay here for 2 seconds here and just say that in order to progress, and in particular at the early stage, we have realized that we had a couple of challenges in front of us. You name them, but we have been through clinical studies, as I mentioned. You need regulatory approval, of course, to place a device. It takes years to bring a device on the market, and the regulatory approval may be difficult. In our case, the first time we look for MDR certification in Europe, it was during COVID. And so it was very difficult at that time, for instance, to get an audit on site, and without an audit on site, we could not get a CE marking. So it took incredible number of months for things you cannot really predict. Industrialization is something which is extremely important, especially because you want to bring the device at an acceptable cost for the healthcare system. There's a high pressure, of course, on cost. And then you work with physician and you want to convince them there's an adoption that you need from the physician, sometimes related also to the reimbursement system, which is tied to it. And that's where grants can help you unlocking the situation. You have different grants. I think Alice showed a couple of them coming at different also stages of the product development. Some comes at TRL 4, some comes later at TRL 6, some can come even and support your commercialization. I think the IC equity part is something that is used in general for the commercialization. So all along the journey, you may find the right grant to support you. In our case, I would say that it's even more relevant. We are a women's healthcare company where the funding is something still difficult to get. You know that less than 4% of the R&D funding goes to women's health, women's health in general. So very little private investment comes to women's health still, and of course we rely still a lot on grants. Maybe we can move to next and speak specifically about our own journey. You can see that we've been alternating initially some from grants from InnoSwiss, which was the Swiss Agency for Development, to an EIC, for instance, that was in an early stage of the company. This was the grant from InnoSwiss was really to develop the first prototype, while the grant at EIC helped us to develop the clinical trial and even the industrialization. And then we moved, for instance, in 2023 to a grant from Eureka. In that case, it was to develop a second generation product and to support that development. And more recently, we've even been through two things. One is a grant from InnoSwiss, equivalent to the EIC at the time. You know that Switzerland was out of the European agreement for some months, for some years. So we received the grant from InnoSwiss in order to continue developing our products. While at the same time, for instance, we also went through the crowdfunding, not to develop products, but more to support the initial steps of commercialization. So you see that we've made a mix, and we've been supporting on that way. You see again from by Evolution Europe for the grants and by Capital Cell for our crowdfunding. And on the right-hand side of our slide, you can see that we are continuing this journey. Now again supporting our commercialization and putting more effort in it through a crowdfunding again, for instance. All that has allowed us, of course, to progress, to bring a product to the market. You see that product was even recognized as best invention 2024 by Time Magazine, but also to get market authorization, not only in the US, FDA, or in Europe with the CE mark, but also extending that market authorization in Brazil, in Saudi Arabia, in Vietnam. So that's how we were able to grow. And that would have not been possible without grant and without the crowdfunding support. And thank you. Maybe we can move to next. Yeah, exactly. There's I would say that crowdfunding is of course a very specific vehicle for investment. It's not a VC. It's not a business angel. It's something different. First of all, maybe I should clear a couple of things. When you make a crowdfunding with Capital Cell, for instance, you don't have 360 investors on your cap table. That's also very important to know. That's something which remains very manageable because you have one line, one SPV, which is representing all those investors through the crowdfunding campaign. And so it remains extremely manageable with one investor. The second thing I would say is also that we, after making our first crowdfunding campaign, we have received a couple of reports from the due diligence made by the platform. And I remember in particular one made by Julien, one of the partners of Capital Cell, making an IP report, which we are still using actually with other investors, mentioning that it was done last year, for instance, in our case, but supporting the robustness of our IP portfolio. And also saying that in terms of speed, you can worry about how long it takes to gather. In our case, I think it was about 360 investors. It took us from the day the campaign was launched to the day the campaign was closed. I think it was about 2 months. To give an order of magnitude, and preparing the campaign took about 1 month, 1 month and a half. So that gives an order of magnitude of how long it takes, which is, if you reflect, and probably for some who have been through fundraising with VCs or with business angels, in my experience at least, says that it was much longer with the VCs and the business angels. So I think it's a strong performance to manage the 3.5 months. But beside that, I like to say that it has another value. Having a crowdfunding campaign, a successful crowdfunding campaign, of course, is a strong validation from your community. In our case, I can say that many patients were coming to us saying that they would like less traumatic IUD insertion, and we were their only hope. So, of course, when you say such a thing to investors, sometimes it's not extremely, it does not resonate as a very strong argument. When you have a crowdfunding campaign which validates this type of argument through a community which has invested in you, it's of course much stronger. It's a way to become visible, to advocate your product also. So it's actually a marketing tool somehow, and towards the patients, towards the physician. In our case, it's very important to talk to both. And of course, it's again a way to diversify. There are stages where probably you can speak to business angels, in general, early stage. There are stages where you can speak to VCs, and I would say, if I want to make it simple, there are two sort of VCs. There are the early stage VCs, the seed funds, which come when your product is not developed. There are VCs which come when you're growing, so they are growth investors. In general, they set the threshold at $1 or $5 million revenue. And sometimes there is a gap in between. What happens when your product is developed? What happens when you are very early stage revenue? That's probably also where we found more support from the community, more support from crowdfunding than from traditional VCs. So that's how, I would say, how I place the crowdfunding campaign in our journey. And maybe we can move next. Yeah, while we were preparing this presentation, we also discussed what we learned along that journey. That's probably something you heard 10 times, so I'm sorry, and I apologize in advance to repeat a couple of things, but I'm used to say that experience highlights only the person who carries it or who lives it. So what I'm going to say may not serve you. You may need to go through it yourself too, also. But I'll say it again. Actually, I even myself heard that and did not really pay attention when I was said that. But anyway, everything takes time, especially in healthcare, in medtech in particular. We're developing hardware. We need to change the habits of physicians. We need to interact with the different healthcare systems. So there is a high complexity in what we're addressing with medtech, and so we need to accept that actually things take time. There is a lot of uncertainty, unexpected elements coming your way. So you need to be prepared in fundraising, maybe sometimes a bit more than you thought you would need. So you need to create buffers. By the way, you need to make sure that you are ready. You work early on fundraising. It's very important to work very early on fundraising to keep relationship, of course, with the ones you are fundraising. To address the reimbursement very early in your plan. Very early means actually even before being authorized in the market. That's super important to say. And all I'd say that sometimes you are happy when you get your clinical validation. You believe that it will open your market. This is unfortunately not true, and you'll have a commercial execution to be performed after it, and it requires effort and time. So start your fundraising early, prepare the market, and focus on your market authorization, obviously, FDA being one of them, but not only. And maybe we can move next, which is, yeah. speaking a bit more about our current fundraising, why do we raise again? Because we're scaling a platform. So first of all, we go international now. So beside US, where we have started the commercialization early 2026, we go international. We need to expand. We need to support. In our case, we're going through distributor network. We need to support those distributors, and that requires some efforts and gets more talents in our team on the commercial side, obviously. But we're also developing a sort of second generation product, a product which is even more sustainable than the first one, which is even more efficient than the first one, which is fitting more healthcare system than the first one. And of course, this also takes effort and time. So that's the journey, and this is why we're opening actually very soon a new crowdfunding campaign, but not only. And I think we can move to next. Yes, just saying thank you and saying that through that journey that is still ongoing, we intending to become a global leader. Obviously, you see that we are expanding internationally and global leader for, first of all, the cervical stabilization and maybe in women's healthcare in general. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mathieu. Thank you so much for sharing your impressive journey and wishing you the best for the next steps and the next challenges. So we now have a few minutes left for questions, and I know many of you have been typing away in the chat. It's still a good moment if you need to ask anything to any speaker. So I'm going to read out your question and direct them to the most relevant speaker. Let me have a look. So first question for Alice, EIC Accelerator TRL6 is the minimum one can apply for an evolution of a product already on the market.
So for the EIC Accelerator, you'll need the TRL6 as you mentioned, and your product should not be on the market actually.
Thank you. We have another question, which is, do you also help with the EIC Pre-Accelerator, which is a grant that is specifically for widening countries in Europe up to 500K?
Yes, we are also supporting company on the Pre-Accelerator. And for what I remember, you don't have a deadline this year, but it will be in 2027. So if you are eligible, I invite you to check that your country is on the list that just mentioned Raphaelle of the widening countries. And I advise you to start your applications or contacting us at least 5 months before the deadline. But yes, we are also supporting companies on this scheme.
Exactly. Another question that is for Capital Cell. Do you sign the NDA only at the due diligence stage?
Yes, exactly. The reason is it's almost made on purpose in the sense that the slide deck we use for the evaluation of the BioExpert network is in purpose something that you are able and you're okay to share it publicly. The idea is not to push you to disclose secret things. The idea is to start to be at ease with the fact that you will have to tell a story to a very large crowd of people, including your worst enemy, maybe. And so where do you set the cursor in between what you are about, what you are trying to explain, to make your story appealing, and what you will keep secret or protected and so on. And doing it first with the BioExpert network is an exercise where we really accompany also the entrepreneur fine-tuning where do they set the cursor. But I mean, don't take it wrong. And on the platform, you will also write a long landing page explaining plenty of things of the project. But bear in mind that this is exactly like an IPO. This will end up being completely public. So the idea is to start on very early stage. Where do we set the cursor and being aware of the fact that you will have to do a lot of communication on that. But again, we've done 160 projects, and I think we haven't disclosed any secrets, and it's quite clear, and we're very firm on that. But at some point in the instruction process, of course, we have ourselves to, as an investor, to dive into your data room, and we do sign an NDA. The different partners that jump into the due diligence, also sign an NDA with us, and this will remain completely confidential.
Okay, that's very clear. Thank you. We have a question for Mathieu as well. How and when did you secure your first lead investor? Was that after the grant phase?
It came nearly in the same time, I'd say. But yes, I think that one of the elements for the grant was to show that we had also some investment on the side from the seed investors. So if we speak about the very first grant we obtained.
Mm-hmm.
At least the very first EIC. InnoSwiss came in the loop and helped on much earlier, but it was a different sort of grant. It was very much R&D and R&D grant where they were supporting activities in universities for us.
Thank you. We have a question for Alice as well. Is if the startup is at the beginning regarding the team structure and don't have all the needed profiles, how do we meet the 0.5 that was to have a diverse profiles in the team?
Well, I don't know exactly where you are located, but I invite you to also come close the network you have in your country. You have a lot of incubators, accelerators, events that only focus on this type of matchmaking for companies, or for even already people that are advising companies on this side. So I invite you to get in touch with the organization you have in your country. Can be about, for example, innovation. If you are in Switzerland, you can contact InnoSwiss. If you are in Spain, CDT. In France, BPI France. But yes, I invite you to come to get in touch with your national agencies, and if not, of course, we can give you a hand to put you in contact with the right point of contact to expand your team.
Yeah, exactly. And to complete that, yeah, we also, when we apply with startups that are really early stage, the goal is to show to the IC or other juries that you will have a clear hiring plan, and that you know the profiles that you need to scale up your technology. So moving on to the next question for Mathieu, what do you think helped you get investments and grants, publications, patents, publicity with Time Magazine?
Probably all except the Time Magazine, which came very late recognition. But I would say yes, of course, the patents is something which is key, I believe, in grants. And Alice, you've seen many applications. I assume that you need to have you need to own your IP and to have a strong IP if possible. There's something at least which is patentable. I think that the team is of course something which is looked at also, and the chance we had in Aspivix at that time was even with the 3 founders at the very beginning. We had a medical doctor, we had one who was an engineer, another one was more commercial profile. So I think it was a good blend, and of course you need to show a strong blend in this.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Challenges as Swiss company to access EU grants. To that one, I can reply that now Switzerland re-entered Horizon Europe as any other country, so there's no barrier to access EU grants right now. Who is determining valuation for a crowdfunding campaign? To Julien.
It's well, first, who is determining the evaluation is the company management team. But it has to be consistent. It's like any exercise of valuation, it has to be consistent and to appeal investors. We are not arriving and saying we think the valuation is this number. It will be very arrogant from our side. It's more a matter of a discussion, first understanding where the company is, what is the status of the maturity level, looking also at the environment around us. And it's the story about you were buying an apartment in Miami in 2006 or in 2009. It was not the same price, although it was the same apartment. We also have some context about this. So we are not the harshest one in negotiation by far. And most of the time, The evaluation is an exercise where you discuss with all the different co-investors and you try to create a consensus. I think just to give you a direct case with Mathieu, I don't think we even had a discussion on that because when the valuation arrived, we thought it was fair in context of everything. Where on other projects, very often we start the discussion quite early. It takes some time, and sometimes we say, we think valuation is too high, but keep it in mind. Do your roadshow, and surprisingly, a company comes back and say, yeah, we had some no's and we don't understand. Try this. And again, the idea is not to squeeze the company at all. The idea is to find a good investment spot and again, not compromising the future because in the future you will have to go up and up in valuation. But it happens to me to say your valuation is too low. It doesn't happen to me every morning, but it happens from time to time.
Thank you. And another question for you: Can you use capital cell already at the pre-seed stage?
I would say most of the time, no. Where we really bring value to the project is when you have your proof of concept done, so your first prototype or your proof of concept. Because before us, there are those business angel, local business angel that can help you to do this round. And where capital cell will bring you the biggest added value is to go from the part, the proof of concept to your commercial traction or to your first in man stage. And this is where you will need 1, 2, 3, 4 million, and those one will be the hardest one. So it's not a film now, but most of the time this is not where we are the best, and we prefer to be a little later on in the stage.
Mm-hmm.
Still before VC, most of the time.
Okay. I'm trying to select a few questions and we will reply to the other ones after the session, if that's okay for everyone, just because we are quite ahead of the schedule. Just quickly for Mathieu, what are the challenges related to market access and how is it different for EU versus the USA? What would you do different other than earlier approach?
Yeah, that's a very good question and a very vivid one for us. Let's say that of course, we have, in terms of market access, we have a large market, which is US, where this healthcare system is more or less aligned and one. In Europe, we have a different healthcare system in every country. So I would say, my impression is that you need to focus your market access effort in the US, first of all. It's too fragmented in Europe in general. Unless you have one or two good markets, you really want to go in Europe. And what I would have done different is I would have started much earlier on the market access pathway in the US. I think we waited for having a FDA clearance or nearly, which is already too late. That's something you need to start much earlier. And the way to build it is not only there is a path which is written, you need to speak with such agency and you need to file or submit a dossier to such agency. This is not really, and there are things which are not written. And the things which are not written are all about being surrounded by key opinion leaders, by influencers, by patient advocacy groups that are supporting the use of your device. And this is the part which is not written, and that must be worked very early.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Have you raised money from VCs too? Yeah, I think you've kind of explained it, but if you want to just re-detail.
Yeah, confirming that I think I will probably answer two questions I've seen, but yes, we raised funds from VCs, and the very first one was named Fox, a Swiss one.
Thanks. For capital cell medtech, what stages are most successful, pre or post market? Do you set the cap on investor or just total amounts?
So, as I said earlier, as soon as you have some type of prototype, it could make sense. So it doesn't have to be already on the market. I mean, being on the market, meaning CE mark or FDA approved, which we were able to jump in for earlier. The cap on investor, I mean, on the total amount, in the framework we do, we are not allowed to raise more than 5 million directly on the platform. But it doesn't mean that the round we are jumping in, it could be far larger. I mean, if you could be doing like a 30 million round and having just a pocket of 2 million only for capital cell, it will be fine if you have a 28 over million coming from elsewhere. So no limit on that. If your question is about, is there a point where things can get crazy and I will be completely diluted at the end of the campaign? Those are things where we set range about what will be the minimum range to consider the campaign a success, and what will be the maximum range where we clearly unplug the campaign to say we stop here because this is the limit of the contract we had together. So don't worry, things are under control during the campaign to make sure that we spend a lot of time analyzing what would be the picture at the end of the round, and is it still coherent with the governance you want to set up and so on.
Okay, maybe just last two questions. Would you use SAFE for crowdfunding, and does crowdfunding facilitate obtaining seed funding from VCs?
So first question about SAFE, the easy answer is no. We do 99% of equity funding. The use of a SAFE could be only done in a sense that it will facilitate operation, and it's the valuation of the operation is already known where we at the moment we do the campaign. So long story short, rather no. Does crowdfunding facilitate obtaining seed funding from VCs? I would say yes and no, in a sense that very often we are part of this momentum we're trying to create. And there was someone saying in the comments that she doesn't like the sheep expression regarding investment. She's right. I mean, it's very harsh to say, well, they all behave like sheep. But at the end of the day, what you're trying to do is, the marketing curve, and you have the very few innovator at the end. So if you're able to catch one of those guys, perfect. But the idea is really to go on the early adopters right behind and to create some move and momentum on that. And those guys are more reachable and easy to make in movement. Because this momentum, then some VC will start to look at it and create again a larger momentum. So again, yes and no. It's mostly dependent on how your storytelling and what will be the impact of your technology. So of course, I mean, we are quite well known now on the stage, whether in Spain, France, or Switzerland. And we do spend a lot of time talking with those guys also. We openly share our deal flow with them, and it's a win-win strategy. So yes, we will be talking with VCs, but at the end, it will be your storytelling that will make the difference.
Okay. Well, thanks everyone for all those questions. For the remaining one, we will be in touch and redirect you directly to the relevant speaker. So that brings us to the end of our time together. I think it has been a really rich conversation. If we move on to the next slide, you will find here our contact details and the contact details for the 3 speakers that are on screen right now. So please don't hesitate to reach out, whether you want to explore applying to a grant, learn more about capital sale platform with Julien, or follow Aspivix journey. That is, by the way, will be fundraising. So if there is any investor in the room that is interested, please feel free to contact Julien. So thank you, Alice, Julien, and Mathieu, for being so generous with your time and experience today. And thank you all for joining us. We will be sending the recording as well as the presentation to everyone who registered. So have a wonderful rest of your day, and bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.